I think that what is very important for leaders like me, for CIOs, but also for the technologies at large, is to make sure that they have an ongoing curiosity to learn. And there is so much that is taking place today, and there is so much that we need to be aware of, that learning agility and curiosity to learn must be part of what you do, and must be exactly the thing that gets you up in the morning and gets you really excited. And showing that curiosity and the appreciation of the importance of technology is also, I think, a factor that allows you to engage your teams.
Never stop learning. That's the message from our guest today, Vittorio Cretella, the CIO of Procter Gamble. For Vittorio, it all boils down to staying curious. He talks with us about how artificial intelligence is being utilized all across Procter & Gamble, and how data is being used to improve the experience for customers, and much more. Enjoy this episode. IT Visionaries is brought to you by Salesforce Platform. If you love the thought leadership on this podcast, Salesforce has even more meaty IT thoughts to chew on. Take your company to the next level with in-depth research and trends right in your inbox. Subscribe to a newsletter tailored to your role at salesforce.com/newsletter. Welcome everyone to another episode of IT Visionaries. And today we have a special guest. He is the CIO of a little company called Procter & Gamble. You might have heard of it. You might have not. His name is Vittorio Cretella. Vittorio, welcome to the show.
Hi, Albert. I'm glad to be here. Yes, Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble is a 184 years old company which makes and sells products across 10 daily categories of consumables in more than 160 countries. And it's the same company that created the floating ivory soap bar back in 1879. And yet the same company that launched in the past couple of years the AI-driven Oral-B electric toothbrush. So we can say that all over those years, innovation has been part of our DNA. And today, innovation is also machine learning. So machine learning is embedded in anything we do, and is increasingly embedded in our products.
No, that is fantastic. And we want to get started right away on some of those levels of innovation. But for our audience to understand a little bit about our guest, Vittorio, he's not only the CIO of Procter & Gamble, he had previously served at Mars Chocolates, or Mars Company, which of course is most famous for its chocolates. So Vittorio has literally been, for decades, been helping build and innovate products that I think has reached 100% market penetration. I cannot imagine a household that has never used a P&G product or a Mars product. But currently today, P&G, you just mentioned something really exciting. You talked about AI as a part of the value chain for creating consumer goods. Now, that's not something we normally think about. Like, what do you mean AI? I use soap, I use shampoo, I use toilet paper. Like, what do you mean AI is involved in this process? Because manufacturing is changing very fast. Give us an idea of what's going on behind the scenes and what you're working on at a company like P&G.
I'd say that digital transformation and digital in general is a game changer for the consumer packaged good industry and for P&G. The CPG industry embraced digital later than other industries, but now it is in full swing. And really a source of constructive disruption for three key areas. One, innovation. The second, consumer engagement. And last but not least, productivity. So in innovation, digital makes us faster. And for example, modeling and simulation, today, we use it to shorten the time to qualify, say, molecules for our formulas from months to weeks. And digitization is more and more embedded in our products, as it is the case for the product I just mentioned before, the AI-driven Oral-IO electric toothbrush, which as an example, right, how data and AI builds a superior consumer experience, driving you now to best brush your teeth as you use it. So those end-to-end consumer experience starts with consumer engagement and brand communication, which is also something that we can personalize thanks to data and AI, communicating at the right time, with the right frequency, and with the right content. And central also to this end-to-end superior experience is the shopping act. And in that space, we work with retailers to make engaging and seamless across online and offline channels. using algorithm to define and optimize product assortment, shelf displays, and promotional activities. And finally, by digitizing and automating our business processes, we can reach new level of productivity, reducing inventories, avoiding waste, optimizing return on investment of our promotional activity. And so in the end, applying digitization and leveraging data and AI across all these dimensions translate for P&G into superior product and consumer experiences, and in the end, growth and value for our shareholders.
Yeah. Now that's awesome to hear. Give us an example. Like, for example, I'd love to hear like a real world example or like a use case that demonstrates this capability, because you hit on a couple things in that, what you just mentioned. And I could see that all coming into play just in the last like 2 years, where supply chains were pushed to the max, arguably still are. And you're talking about, hey, let's use the thing with inventories. First of all, we already know no one wants to carry inventory. Everyone wants like fast turnaround. They want just enough product on the shelf. It impacts manufacturing, shipping, sales. Everyone down the value chain wants low inventory carryover. They want high turnover and sell the products. Give us an idea of what's been happening just the last 2 years, because it seems like, if you've been preparing for this moment, that this is where these things really come into play.
Yeah, let me just give you a practical example of using AI really to increase productivity across the supply chain. One of the example I often refer to is one of the key issues in CPG is when you shift products. So when you phase in a new product, you replace a product. And often that phasing of a product in and phasing of the old product out results into a lot of waste, scrap, and out of stock of the new product. Yeah. So what we have been doing, we have been leveraging AI, and specifically we have using mixed integral linear programming algorithm to optimize the inventory quantities, taking into account consumer demand, production plans, the bill of materials, and the raw materials involved with the two different products that have to be phased. And we use that today across 65%, more than 65% of our product changes. And the result was in excess of $60 million of savings because of better inventories and scrap avoidance across the supply chain.
So when this partnership that you have, is it like your guys are sharing data back and forth with retailers? So for example, where you're saying, hey, you got data on how the product is selling, for example, let's say regionally, and then a retailer might have data suggesting, hey, this is how we're selling in store, and this helps them identify maybe the best blend of products to carry?
Yeah, increasingly, we apply data is key part of getting value, business value with AI. And increasingly, we look at a large scope of data that includes the extended supply chain, so retailers as well as vendors. But above all, what we have been doing, we have been intentional with data since day one. And one of the key challenges for a large enterprise like Procter Gamble is to break across silos of information, so that by adopting, consistent taxonomy, by consolidating data asset into our enterprise data lake, we overcome the legacy data architecture that historically has been built aligned to functions and to transactional processes. So breaking through that enables use cases transversally across the company and the extended company, so vendors and customers. And is a necessary step, because there aren't today, if you want, data mesh solutions that you can apply at scale, so that you can connect data regardless of where they sit. That you need really to consolidate and use the same taxonomy. And that means making data visible and supporting that with horizontal enterprise data platforms that allows the ingestion, preparation, the metadata, the quality, security, so that you apply that across multiple data pipeline, and you can feed your algorithms and your model that, like the example I gave, will provide better performance, more efficiency, and resiliency across the supply chain.
Give us an idea of what it takes globally in regards to like people, personnel, staff, skills to do this, because P&G, you guys have, I don't know how many brands. I know a lot, right? You mentioned hundreds of countries. And then we all know, and for anyone who's not traveled internationally, when a big company represents itself in another country, the SKUs are different. Like the size of the packaging is different. The brands are different. Everything's different, right? And then the infrastructure of each given country is also different. So what we might have as big box retail infrastructure here in the United States, you go to somewhere like Costa Rica, it's not like that. It's a lot different. And if I go to a remote surf town in Costa Rica, I'm still can get access to a P&G
It's very
product.
diverse. It's large, diverse. So it means that you have to go to scale, but with granularity. And the recipe we have used had basically 4 key ingredients: data, talent, a platform approach, and trust. I spoke about data, right? And how we made sure that we consolidate them and we use those consistent taxonomy, and we leverage our enterprise data lake to make sure that we can look at data across functions and across processes. Now, another key factor that you mentioned is talent.
Yeah.
And we starting with the powerful group of hundreds of data scientists. On one end are organized as a team, and on the other end are really embedded across the organization so that they are really close to a business, to activate business cases, to contribute with that last mile of customization, of adaptation of an algorithms so that it fully provides the value. So we've invested in data science, but also invested in strong internal data and machine learning engineering capabilities. We have an healthy ratio of 50-50 of internal and external resources so that we can maintain expertise, but at the same time, we have the elasticity that we need to meet, rapidly growing demand. And the ratio of 50-50 varies depending on roles. So large majority of data scientists, for instance, are internal, right? And we focus on upskilling. We have an internal training program that has multiple levels of certification. And I must say, we are really blessed by having an incredible group of talented people. Now, I spoke about platforms, and that is something specific to our success formulas, the capability to build algorithms that can address a broad set of business challenges and opportunities. So as an example, we have an algorithm that is proprietary. It's called Neighborhood Analytics, that is used to classify clusters of stores or neighborhoods based on consumer demographics and consumptions and demand signals, including point of sales data. Now, that algorithms has several applications in marketing, sales and distribution, and our data scientists work very closely in those cross-functional teams to activate use cases. It's something, for instance, that allows us to say which type of product assortment should be distributed in that specific cluster of stores, which type of promotional activities, which type of combination of social media type of advertising with promotion in store. So endless combination, as you said, to cope with the diversity of the different trade structure around the 160 countries we operate with, and really have a granular application of the power of this platform, but to a diverse set of use cases. And then finally, in our formula to scale, there is trust. And it's building trust in AI, building trust in the prediction of AI across the organization, which is a major cultural challenge, requiring a combination to explainability, but at the same time, because there is no something like a magic wand of explainability today, so it has to be combined with leadership support. And also processes and systems to make sure that we monitor AI compliance and we avoid bias and drift. And all those, all these components, as I said, data, talent, a platform approach, and trust are what allowed us to scale AI across the whole P&G.
Yeah, it's an amazing complex thing, because when we are at the when we're at the grocery store or something like that, and we see some Bounty paper towels or something like that at one of the P&G brands, it's really mind-boggling to think about how much digitization, AI, machine learning, technical talent, I guess is the best way to describe it, that it takes just to figure out what's the right number of toilet paper paper towel rolls to carry on the store. What's the optimum shipment? What's the blend in the market? What's the promotion? Because when we all get P&G coupons, I think a lot of consumers are like, oh, it's, it says $5 off, 10% off, but it's crazy to think about how structured the approach is to think, hey, this is the optimum outcome if we give this type of promotion in this zip code.
And then just an example, Albert, because AI, machine learning are at the core of everything we do.
Yeah.
Not just the examples that we discussed, but all the area of our business. Yeah, sure, evaluating optimized promotion, but also scheduling TV advertising,
Yeah.
optimizing the way you display your products on the shelves, both the brick and mortar shelf, but also online. The way we bid for advertising or bid for online search, the formula recommenders for our R&D engineers, and also the increasingly the use we do of algorithm, including deep learning for images, to analyze product quality directly on the production line.
Yeah.
So it's a comprehensive scope. As I said, it's really enabled by about 200 internal data scientists, many of them PhD level, and a robust AI engineering team, MLOps capabilities, working with 10 petabytes of data and the equivalent of thousands of CPUs and hundreds of GPUs. And the growth of our AI capabilities over the last 3 years has been exponential. Really, going from augmenting the human capability with descriptive analytics to now automating decisions that humans decide to delegate with prescriptive AI, which is about taking the prediction of AI and injecting them directly back into business processes and systems with APIs.
No, let me ask you, change the subject a little bit, but keep on the same track. As a consumer, we've heard a lot of examples of how it's going to help you operate the business better, but there's also, you mentioned in your stories, how it's going to help us as consumers. You mentioned the toothbrush, for example, and I'm going to ask you some questions about like some of the product development technologies, because this technology, like you said, is being able to make it safer, better, cleaner. I'm assuming every product category we can look at P&G. Like I'll use one of the soaps, Tide, right? Or detergents, Tide. Probably you guys are trying to figure out, I'm assuming, how to make it clean better with less raw material at a lower cost, constant product innovation, right? Like what are some of the things you think you look forward to seeing unleashed maybe in the next 5 years that, some of the things that would not be available otherwise because, prior to AI?
Yeah, what I can share, obviously. So,
Yeah.
but I must say, generally, for our consumers, data are becoming an integral part of their superior experience. And we use data to feed our innovation. So you'll be amazed to see how much of the consumer research that we perform today is enabled by data and by IoT technology. So in the home of our consumer panels, giving us really insights about consumer behavior that we feed into our product development. But in general, for our consumers, when they opt in with us, we can digitize the product usage and behaviors and gain a better understanding of the jobs to be done in the home, which in turn allow us to create better products and better guidance for consumers on how to use them. So our BIO has been the leading example, as we said, how to use the product user information to provide direct feedback to the consumer and advice. And you'll see that talking about something that is coming up, the new Oral-B IO 10 make this process even more frictionless because you get real-time feedback on brushing area coverage and the pressure you apply from the base without the need to connect via our mobile phone. So directly in your bathroom, the charging base of the toothbrush will show you how to best brush your teeth. And really is an example of how digitization deepens the relationship between P&G and consumers, which I think is fascinating. I've been in this industry for 35 years, and I never seen, like in the past 10 years, the increasingly intimacy that is being created between manufacturers and consumers, and the value that can be generated into, and the data can generate into advice and services that we can provide. So consumers choose to share the data with us, and we use that to continually improve the product.
I'm telling you right now, my son needs that. Everyone who's got kids who's had a struggle getting them to brush their teeth properly, you need an AI-powered toothbrush that sends the signal right to the charging base. So exactly, to tell you the kid, hey, get your front teeth a little bit more, get your back teeth a little more. I'm telling you right now, if my kids had that, I'm assuming it'd be better because right now I mean, I don't know if, have you ever seen a kid brush their teeth, but they're not good at it. When you think about the push and the demand for innovation, because consumers, like you said, this is it's for the business, but it's also for the consumers, and consumers constantly want more from you as well, right? Then there's always going to want more, better products, faster, cheaper. Everything's going to be more and more and more. Technology is everyone wants more and more and more. When you think about how all these things are pulling at each other, maximum bandwidth, uh, more demands for support and innovation, how do you think about accelerating innovation, but also, because that big part of what you said was that trust, maintaining the security and standards so that things are done properly, because that old mantra in software of move fast and break things, man, that does not apply for CPG. You cannot send and ship product out there that has got problems or, things like that. Like the consumers are not forgiving if there's something wrong with my toothpaste. Like I'm not going to be forgiving for that.
Yeah, I think if we take the example of AI, one way of accelerating innovation and scaling up while at the same time maintaining quality is leveraging automation. And I believe that we have no choice in the future to really embrace automation to scale AI, which is central to our digital transformation strategy. So, basically, what we want to do is to make sure that in things like data, we create a way of making it easier for our data scientists, who, if you look at many surveys, spend a large amount of that time creating those data pipeline, cleansing data, integrating them, to have the capability to create those data pipeline and integrate the data in a self-service mode and with quality. And so one thing that we developed internally is an ETL engine that provides, it's called Turbine, that provides the data preparation capability and allows the creation, execution, and monitoring of ETL processes by a simplified visual interface, taking advantage at the same time of features that make sure that you have integration with the services like data quality, metadata creation, security, and others. And thanks to that, our data scientists, architects, business owners can produce those refined data sets in no time to feed our analytical solution and the algorithm development process. Another area where we increasingly leverage automation to accelerate innovation for AI is model development and the whole life cycle of algorithm development. So we have a vision that is going from prototyping models that needs to be translated for production to developing production-ready model from day one, which means that we are creating the AI factory, which automates away complexity and give the data scientists and the AI engineers the capability to develop, deploy, govern, monitor models in the cloud and at the edge, along with the experimentation platform that they need to continue to evaluate and improve the models, right? And then finally, again, in the journey to automate and accelerate AI, we have to take account of trust. And so make sure that risk and bias management capabilities grow accordingly. And we really moving from a manual model of risk assessment to something systemic, digitalized. And today we have self-assessment guides. We have roles of model risk officers that are assigned to each product. But what we are now introducing is a new capability that will track and record models when they are in productions. So that's an example of how do we make sure that while we develop innovation, we make sure that we don't lose track of the quality and the security. And it's a matter, I say, of creating policies and processes that are usable and striking, if you want, the right trade-off between the importance and the depth, the robustness of the policies and its usability. And again, automation, like in the DevOps process, equipping our software engineers with capability to perform automated testing, to provide in their pipelines an immediate report that says, here is how the code you have developed needs to be reviewed or has some security flows. And basically, the famous shifting left of the of some of the tasks, like making code secure, will make sure that the final quality will be higher.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I mean, there's, like you said, like if you're not developing the tooling that can monitor these processes for you, because it's just moving too fast. It's no longer people. It can't be people anymore to monitor these processes. You got to have layers of automation.
There is a Alberta people component, right? So there is nothing worse, by the way, than a perfect policy that is not followed by anybody.
That's true.
and one thing that helps is to embed members from info security, architecture, governance in the development teams. So making sure that they are there, and again, they reflect this effective, realistic trade-off between purpose of a policy or a standard and applicability, right? But again, automation, I think, will give a lot of additional, if you want, leeway of and capability to the development teams, to the coder, and will be key to match speed with quality.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you shared a ton about how P&G operates, how it's thinking about how digital transformation, digitization is going to make consumer products better for the businesses, for the consumers, everywhere all around. I'm curious for yourself, where do you like to spend your time and energy? Because there's a lot of things you oversee, right? What fires you up when you wake up in the morning and you say, hey, I'm going to go to work today? What gets you excited? Is it some of the new product innovation? Is it some of the implementation of processes? Like, give it an idea of what gets you excited or most fired up about your role and the industry you're in.
I keep saying that there hasn't been a more exciting time to be a CIO, right? In CPG. With technology becoming so mainstream to the business value proposition. And I think that what is very important for leaders like me, for CIOs, but also for the technologies at large, is to make sure that they have an ongoing curiosity to learn. And there is so much that is taking place today, and there is so much that we need to be aware of, that learning agility and curiosity to learn must be part of what you do, and must be exactly the thing that gets you up in the morning and gets you really excited. And, showing that curiosity and the appreciation of the importance of technology is also, I think, a factor that allows you to engage your teams. And it's not about micromanagement. It's about having the capability to have a broad perspective of the business, but at the same time, it's a bit the helicopter view. Sometimes, dive in and getting into detail to understand more of what's behind, what's under the hood, and how does the engine work, and that feeds and build your judgment, your technology judgment. So I think that's what is fascinating, and it's very broad scope. As you said, there is so much that today technology can provide, and there are so many applications. And for me, another thing that is very exciting for IT leaders today is the possibility to connect the dots and making sure that we can understand how to apply the technology, how to generate business value. So the same curiosity that applies to technology has to apply to a curiosity about our consumers, our business processes, how our business works. I think that's fascinating, and is one of the things that should be motivating for any technologists who think of investing into a part of all their career into becoming an IT professional in CPG, like have been for the last 35 years.
Yeah, and I got to ask, that ongoing curiosity, and we know that a lot of people learn from peers, but the reality is where you sit is there's only a handful of peers. So do you learn from people that are also in CPG, or do you, I'm assuming you have to go outside your industry because there's only a handful of people in, like at the level of production that P&G, right? Like if I were to say, looking across my street, who looks like me? Well, there's only a handful of companies, which means there's only a handful of CIOs that have a role similar to yours in CPG. Now, there's more if you go outside that industry, like you go into like auto, manufacturing, like anyone who has that global footprint, national footprint, or international footprint. I'm curious, who do you learn from? Like, who do you bounce ideas off of?
I think the ecosystem and the peer network must be very diverse, and it obviously should include Fortune 500 companies, but also a strong connection to the ecosystem of innovation, including venture capitals, accelerators,
Okay.
incubators. I had the opportunity of taking 2 years and spending 2 years as advisor for digital transformation and getting very close to the ecosystem of innovation and spending more time that my daily job as CIO allows me to. And I think is a great source of inspiration on one end and also a great source of learning. And so I wouldn't say that obviously you need to work and benchmark yourself and create that healthy network of relationship with CIO and business leaders in the industry, in CPG and beyond CPG in Fortune 500. But at the same time, I'll say the ecosystem of innovation, it's definitely a place that a CIO needs to invest time into.
No doubt about it. Yeah, yeah. I would imagine some of the most exciting things are happening. Possibly, the the old belief in startup world is that enterprises move slowly. So innovation typically happens at software companies that are just start emerging. So I like the way you approach it. Where it's like, hey, you're going to look at your peers, but you also got to look at these startups because they are obviously a lot of times trying to do something that has never been done before. Pretty exciting stuff. Now, for yourself, I'd love for our audience to learn a little bit more about you because you've had a long career in CPG. It's really exciting, but you didn't, give us an idea. When you started, what were you thinking when you first started getting into this industry? Did you think, hey, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to invest all my time, global CIO. Most people don't think that way. They think, hey, I'm just going to do a good job right now, right here, and do the best I can. Give us an idea. What were you like when you first entered the industry?
Well, let's say that I was as passionate as I am today of
Yeah.
seeing the results of applied technology. And I'm passionate about technology, and above all, I'm passionate about technology being used to drive business value. And in our case, what is very exciting, and is very exciting for any new joiners into our organization, and to see how technology translates into a superior value proposition for billions of consumers around the world, right? And so I think that when I started, two things that kept me really engaged is on one end, understanding how the business work, and at the same time, keep learning about how technology can contribute to the business. And this is really what I invite any of our new joiners to use those two things. Number one, continue to be proficient with technology, which you achieve through training, certifications, but above all, practicing throughout their career. So never lose that muscle of doing some hands-on work or getting close to the detail. So you can keep alive that level of judgment and understanding of technology, and at the same time continue to gain a broad business perspective. And it's so exciting in a company like P&G, you said it before, across 160 countries, across 10 categories, ranging from as you said, paper towels, healthcare, feminine care, baby care, beauty, fabric, and home care. So it's very diverse and gives a lot of opportunity to learn across very diverse markets. And for our employees, the fact that they can rotate across different parts of organization, including roles that are embedded in business units at the core face of our business, is a huge opportunity to learn. And by the way, over the past 2 years, intentionally, I injected more IT resources into our lines of business, rebalancing the organization of central teams with really dedicated resources in our category and markets, where our consumers and customers are. And so all that helps developing the learning agility muscle, and what is the thing that keeps it going after so many years, because technology keeps constantly changing.
Yeah.
And it's so pervasive to everything we do. So we need to constantly learn and experiment. And I was lucky during my career, and I'm very keen to give IT employees, our IT people, the same opportunity to have. I was given space to experiment and to continuously learn, and that because I had leaders who had the appreciation of what it takes to unleash the power of technology, which an appreciation that I believe as a leader comes from really practicing the helicopter view that I mentioned before. So having a broad perspective of the business landscape, but at the same time to deep dive into details not to micromanage, but to gain more understanding and therefore educate your own judgment. So that leadership attitude, I think, is the best way to train, coach our workforce and make them successful at their job and develop their career.
You know, we at IT Visionaries get to interview a lot of great CTOs, CIOs, VPs of engineering across multiple sectors. And that's the one thing we always hear about is like, you know, if you are a young technical mind and you feel as though your innovation is being stymied by company process or protocols, most of those minds will eventually choose to leave. So it's pretty exciting to hear that sounds like since you came out of school that you've always been afforded the opportunity to build, learn, try new things, keeping that mind fresh. I mean, really, you wouldn't think of a CPG company acting as a software company, but it kind of has similar principles as a tech company. Hey, like you got to engineer, you got to innovate, you got to keep building.
Oh, definitely. And as a matter of fact, we are insourcing engineering capability in greater numbers, including software engineers. So we have a plan to recruit in excess of 1,100 software engineers over the next 3 years, because it's mainstream of what we do today, whether it's mobile applications, whether it's web applications, AI and ML ops. So applying really those engineering capability across the board. But it's a tough market, as you know, right?
Yeah.
As many others, we have unique recruiting challenges. Is a common theme across the industry. You know, especially in the last 2 years, people are evaluating their priorities, changing their expectation, including where to work, live, play, and work is not always the top priority. And so, and by the way, as we insource engineering capability in greater numbers, including those software engineers, we compete with a broader spectrum of companies, including technology native companies and startups. So it's a perfect storm. On one hand, demand for talent in a very challenging job market for IT. But I do believe that at P&G, we have a unique value proposition for IT talent, which is essentially to work on applied innovation at scale. Scale because we are one of the biggest CPG companies in the world, and the scale of our innovation across many areas, whether it's AI or ML ops, industrial or consumer IoT, marketing technology, is impressive, unique, and definitely way larger than anything you can experience in a startup. At the same time, our technologies get to see the impact of their work. They are not small cogs in a big engine. They are part of innovation process end to end. And in a big technology company, you may write a piece of code of a solution which may be used by some business you may not even get to know. At P&G, on the other hand, you write the algorithm that drives two-digit growth of sales in a specific market. And you see that, and you are part of that story, and it's extremely rewarding. So I think that for technology at P&G, we can offer a rewarding career, and at the same time, working for a value-driven company with strong principles and values, focus on growth and technology for good.
Hey, listen, Vittorio, I mean, I love the way you frame it up, and I'm sure the CEO, there's no pressure from the CEO. Hey, 1,100 engineers, no problem. It is going to be a battle. And I think, when I think of it, when I hear these numbers is just how much better our lives could potentially be as consumers, right? If all these products keep innovating at scale, this is a really great time to be alive. You know what I mean? As a consumer, and as a technology worker. Vittorio, I want to say thank you for joining us today on IT Visionaries. But before you go, it is time for the lightning round. The lightning round is brought to us by Salesforce Platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Vittorio, this is where we ask you questions outside of the world of work so our audience can get to know you a little better. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. We see on your LinkedIn that you went to school in Italy. Tell us you grew up in Italy. Is that accurate?
Yes, I was born, raised in Italy, but for the last 20 years, the US has been and is now my home.
There you go. How often, I know the last 2 years have been brutal, but how often do you get to go back home?
Well, usually it's once a year.
Just once a year? Nice. When I was in high school, I dated a girl who was an Italian, and I got to be invited to an Italian family meal. I want to know, does your family have epic, huge meals?
I wouldn't say epic. So I have a 14 years old who's, more American than Italian, I'd say, at this point. And so, but we still, food and soccer are the two things that, despite being really much at home in the US, I still kept of my original country. So food is definitely something.
What is, in your opinion, the absolute best Italian dish?
Well, there are so many, it's difficult to choose.
Not a problem. When you think about what you do outside of work, are you a builder outside of work? Because you're a builder at work. Do you build things at home, whether it's with your hands, technology? What do you like to do when the workday is over?
Yeah, I think sometimes working with my hands and away from a keyboard is a way of, recharging a bit. And I like to work on my motorcycles, but I must say I'm much better IT professional than a mechanic.
What kind of motorcycles do you ride?
I have 3 motorcycles and they're all twins. I like 2 cylinders, so Ducati, Harley Davidson, and a Buell.
A Buell. Okay.
Yes.
So you ride all twins. Are these all cruiser bikes or are they street fighters?
No, there's all of them: a cruiser, a street fighter, and a racing bike.
Oh my man, this guy likes to go fast. Have you ever raced your bike on a track?
Yes, I did. I took my Ducati on a track, but that was 20 years ago.
Still, it was blazing fast. Then if you're a race fan and a motorcycle fan, and you're Italian, I got to believe, are you a Valentino Rossi fan or did you like MotoGP?
I like MotoGP, and as any Italian, I was a fan of Valentino, but Ducati, where my heart is Ducati.
Okay, so you're more allegiance to the team.
Yeah.
For anyone who's listening, whoever's listening and not familiar, Ducati is high-end Italian. It's like the Ferrari of motorcycles, beautiful bikes, and known for its legendary roar. When you run a Ducati, and if your eyes were closed and a Ducati went by, you would know that it's Ducati.
Albert, I'm sure the majority of the listeners are very familiar with Ducati. You don't need to explain.
You never know. Vittorio, it was awesome having you on IT Visionaries. Thanks for sharing what you're up to at P&G. Thanks for sharing also a little bit about your career, and thanks for sharing a little insight into your world outside of work. It was awesome having you on the show.
Thank you, Albert. It was a pleasure.